Hello, everybody, and welcome to Module 4 of Infusionsoft Advanced. Today is all about campaigns. So sit back, make yourself comfortable. Also, just a couple of notes. You've probably already been aware of this, but we did change passwords on the library, as well as we changed the sandbox passwords to Infusionsoft. So you'll make sure that you check the resource library for those details, or if you have any issues, please reach out to us at help@techiementor.com and we'll get you what you need, okay? Unfortunately, we have to do that every so often. All right, so our agenda today, we'll take a quick moment and do some quick housekeeping. We'll review Module 3. And today's, we did campaigns in the beginning class, but really gonna kind of more of a deep dive today. So we're going to talk about actions, goals, terms, what are called decision nodes, and then overall performance of a campaign. So you can kind of see where somebody is, what type of performance you're getting, how many signups you're getting, and that type of stuff. So just your analytics, if you will. And then we'll have our homework, and then obviously no Q&A since this isn't live, but you can certainly send us an email, help@techiementor.com, or you can head over to Facebook and you can post any questions or issues in our private Facebook group. If you don't have access to that, let us know. We'll make sure that we get you added. So again, recordings and resources, I do have some documents that I'm trying to get finished for you, so keep your eyes open for that. But obviously the recordings are all yours to keep. You have access to the sandbox. I'll give you access for a few more weeks, so you'll be able to dabble in there a little bit. And if you need any help, again, you can reach us at the private Facebook group, or you can send us an email at help@techiementor.com. So long ago, Module 3, before I got sick, we were talking about orders, setting up shipping and taxes, and then just overall shopping cart themes. So if somebody's actually using the shopping cart within Infusionsoft, how to set up a theme that would be branded to their business. So we're just going to kind of review what we did in the beginning class in case you haven't used campaigns since then. And campaigns is something that can be very simple or very complex. Some people have a pushback. They don't really want to use them. They'd rather use the legacy features in Infusionsoft. But they really do combine all of the things that you need to do in one easy sequence. So the campaign builder basically takes you through your sales funnel. Okay, so it basically looks at the sales funnel from start to finish. So in order for campaigns to be effective for yourself or your clients, you have to understand the whole sales funnel process. And basically a sales funnel is how you take someone from being a prospect to a client. And there can be very, very simple ones. There can be very complex ones. It depends if you're a service-based business, if you're a product-based business. They're all a little different. But in order to get the most out of the campaign builder, you really have to understand your client's sales funnel. Now, a lot of people don't understand sales funnels. And so actually that's a class I'm going to be putting together sometime this year to really talk through what's a sales funnel and how you can coach your clients that don't really understand a sales funnel, how to get them to understand the benefit of having a funnel and having a plan as to how you're going to take your prospects and make them clients. How do you get from point A to point Z, so to speak. So a campaign, again, is your marketing and sales strategy. So as I talked about, it's really for your sales funnel. It includes goals and a set of actions that's known as a sequence. So basically you say, okay, if somebody signs up for your free offer on your website, what happens? What's the next thing that they do? And the benefit to the campaign is it's all automated and you can actually track someone's progress through it. You can do all of the things in a campaign manually within Infusionsoft using the legacy features, but the beauty of the campaign is all in one spot. Right? So you don't have to go to different screens. You can do it from start to finish. So campaigns can be very simple or very complex, just depending on the goals that your client or yourself has for that specific campaign. My best advice to you is really, really take the time to play with them because it's one of those things that you get better every time you use it. So take advantage of the sandbox, if you would, and play. And really play with these. So I'm going to give you some homework on this as well. The campaign builder, it's drag and drop. So it's very simple. As I said, it combines things like sequences and tags and web forms and landing pages. All of that is all kind of put into one big sequence. Each campaign has a strategy. Now here's the biggest thing I think I found with working with campaigns is people don't really have a strategy. right? They don't really have a sales funnel. So that makes it really ineffective to use a campaign because there's no strategy behind it. So my point to you is that you need to make sure you understand the strategy, the sales funnel, what is it that the client's trying to accomplish, and they may look to you to kind of help with that. So we're going to do a couple different samples here. When the goal is reached, it triggers the sequences, or excuse me, it triggers the actions in the specific sequence. So for instance, if somebody signs up for your free offer, the actions could be apply a tag and then send them an email. Okay, well, if they don't actually do the action or the goal isn't reached, then obviously that's not going to be sent out. So campaigns are made up of goals, and the goals are what triggers the action. So once somebody completes a goal, it takes the next step in the sequence. So that's really important to understand, that goals drive the campaign. Once a goal has been reached, then an action will be triggered. If the goal isn't reached, then the action isn't done. So a lot of times people will look at the metrics or the analytics around a campaign and they don't understand why things aren't happening. It's because a goal wasn't reached. So you might need to look at your goals again to make sure that they're set up correctly. I can't stress. So some of the actions, remember, it's all about goals, it's all about actions. So the biggest thing that you can do if somebody wants you to work in a campaign is really sit down and have that strategy mapped out so you understand. And I have a sample for you in the library that kind of maps out the strategy that we're going to do for the homework. But actions can include the following, and this is just a sample. There's more that you can do. You can apply tags, you can complete a purchase, you can have them fill out a web form, you can send an email, you can create a task, you can create an opportunity, you can send them a voicemail. So there's all the different things that you can do. The actions, as far as the actions you can complete in Infusionsoft, you can also do with a campaign sequence. So really taking all of the actions that are available in Infusionsoft and actually put them into a sequence campaign. There are also something called decision nodes, and we're going to look at all this here in just a minute. But basically, a decision node will automatically be created if there's more than one possible outcome. So there's multiple paths that someone can take depending on the answer that they give, right? Maybe, for instance, that you have a checkbox that has a yes or no question. And depending on whether they answer yes or no, right, depends on the path that they're going to take through that campaign. So a decision node allows you to have multiple paths within your campaign, which means you could have multiple goals, which means if they do A, they're going to do these actions are going to be completed. If they do B, the following actions will be completed, okay? So we're going to jump in and look at all this stuff. I just kind of want to review it with you. And then some sample goals that you can set up. You can have them sign up for your newsletter. You can have them register for an event, whether the event is free or paid, right? Attend an event would be attending the event versus registering. Obviously, a lot of people register but never actually make it to the event. So those would be two different goals, right? One is to actually have them register. Two is actually to have them attend it. And obviously, for those who attend, they may get more or some specials versus the people that didn't attend but just registered. You can ask for information. You can have them download a file. They can complete a purchase. You can, or they can, request or attend a meeting with you, not an event, but a meeting. So these are just ideas, and you're going to see all of these set up in the campaign builder. Goals can be initiated. So the goals can be initiated by the contact, which means that would be the end user. That would be the person that sits on your website and clicks on your form. So that's a contact. A user would be somebody who is a registered user in your Infusionsoft. So that would be, like in my instance, it would be me. So a user is somebody who's a registered user that can log into Infusionsoft, and then an API, which would be an integration with another piece of software. So my point is goals can be initiated by one of these three. The most common is obviously the contact, which is the person who's the prospect, right, moving through your funnel. A user would be somebody who is signed in, like you as a virtual assistant or an online business manager. And an API, again, would be if your Infusionsoft is sending information to a third-party program. Maybe you have a third-party software that you're using. Okay, so we're going to just kind of walk through some of these terms, and then we're actually going to dive in and start looking at the campaign builder. You have a canvas. you have what are called snippets. So the canvas is actually where you do the work in Infusionsoft. The snippets are the things that you can add to the canvas. You have traffic sources, and that's how the traffic comes into the campaign, right? So that's how people actually get into your sales funnel, if you will. What are your goals? What are the methods to achieve your goals? What is the entry point that people can enter into your campaign? Your sequences and then notes you can take. So if you have a very complex campaign, you can take notes as to what the campaign does, especially if there's multiple people in it. The nice thing about campaigns is they can also be draft. Just like you can draft templates and messages, you can also have a campaign that's in draft mode, which means it's not published, which means it's not active. Email confirmations. We talked about the decision node. You actually have to publish it in order for it to be live. Performance, and then web form. So these are just some of the terms, and a lot of this is going to be kind of a little more, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm stumbling here. Make a little more sense once we actually get in and start working. And then the sequences that you have are timers, communications, process, and notes. Okay, so with that, let me just, actually, you know what? I knew I was missing something. So this is our plan. So as I mentioned, the things that you really need to take away from this is, one, you should always have a plan when it comes to campaigns. You need to have a strategy. You need to have a roadmap as to, okay, how do they get into the campaign and then where do they go? Is there more than one path? Is there a decision that they need to make? Do they need to click on a yes or no? So as I said, these can be very simple or very complex. And I'm just going to give you a couple different samples of this, but my biggest advice to you, recommendation, is to come in and actually play with it to really get a good idea of how it works. So first of all, what's the goal or purpose of the campaign? Are they purchasing something? Are they signing up for something, a free offer, an event? What is that goal? How are you marketing it? Where is the traffic coming from? Is it coming from social media? Is it coming from a live event? Is it coming from your website? And then what's the entry point? So in other words, how do they actually get into the campaign? What's the start of that funnel? Is it a web form on your website, or is it a landing page somewhere? Do they call you? Is it on Facebook? So my point is you kind of have to map out your strategy. So this really pulls in your sales funnel, which also pulls in your marketing pieces. And a lot of times, as I mentioned, clients may not know this. So you may need to coach them a little bit to say, okay, you want me to do a campaign, I need to know a little bit more information. Ask yourself what type of action is needed to move to the next step. In other words, achieve the goal. So if somebody signs up on a web form, on a website, what happens then? Well, they sign up and they hit the register button, for instance, or submit button, whatever it might be. And then at that point, what happens? Well, maybe they have a tag that's added, and then they get sent out a sequence. And then in that sequence, there's something that they need to click on, which will achieve another goal, which will move them down another path. So think of this. It can almost look like a spider chart, which means there can be multiple paths based on multiple answers, or it could just be one straight path, right? So think of a map. There's more than one way to get somewhere depending on the route that you're coming from. It's the same idea with the campaign. Hopefully I'm not making this more confusing by telling you that. And our goal, so this is our goal for today. This is what I'm going to kind of demo for you. We're going to register for an event. Okay, so we're going to have, let's say, a webinar. And that webinar is maybe a 3-part series. They're going to fill out a web form on my website, right? And then once they fill out that web form, I'm going to add a tag, and I'm going to add them to a sequence. Okay, so this is a pretty simple one just to start with, but I want to kind of give you an idea of a simple one that we can make it more complex. So I'm logged into Infusionsoft, obviously, and we're going to get started. So one of the things that I created was my nav bar, and we're going to talk about that in the next session. And basically the nav bar allows you to customize this, and it also allows you to customize your dashboard here. So I already have Campaign Builder here. So I'm going to click on View Campaigns. Now there are lots of campaigns that are already here. I've done some of these, and there's obviously some play ones here. We're going to start with a new one, and I'm just going to create a campaign, and you obviously want to give it a name. So we'll call this webinar registration. Okay, and save. Okay, so this is the canvas, this area right here, and you can, oops. This is a space that you can zoom in and zoom out, but this is basically where you build your campaign. So it's almost like just a graph paper that you're going to be building something. Now you'll notice you have an edit and a performance tab. You also have the ability to get back to the list, and then you have a campaign. So you can save, make a copy, rename, print, and you can actually save it as an image, which is kind of cool. So once you build your campaign, you can create an image from it. Okay. And then you also can create templates for campaigns. So first of all, we're going to talk about the snippets that we have, which is what's over here. First of all is the traffic sources. Where is the traffic? So this is the entry to your campaign. Okay, this is how they get into the funnel. This is how they get into this campaign sequence. And remember, our campaign sequence is they're going to register for an event, and once they register for the event, we're going to add a tag and we're going to add them to a sequence. So the first thing we need to do is figure out what our traffic source. Now these are just placeholders. These don't actually have any configuration to them. You don't have to do anything with these. This is just so you know how traffic came in. This is a great thing to track your marketing, right? So as you can see, it could come from your website, Facebook, YouTube, webinar, direct mail, your website. Now you could actually use WordPress if you wanted, but you could use your website, live, organic, existing list, or other. So I can just grab this and throw it out here. And you can double click on this and you can change this. So if you have multiple websites, you can put that on there. Okay. So this is the source. This is how people are coming into my campaign. And you can have multiple sources. So I could actually say, well, it could be Techie Mentor, and it could also be Facebook, for instance. And I'm just dragging and dropping, right? And I could just say Facebook or fan page. Whoops. Or it could be an ad that you ran, right? So there we go. So I have two different traffic sources. You can have multiple traffic sources, right? It doesn't matter how they get there. If you're sending them all to the same web form, right? Because that's where we're going to be going. Remember, this is a sequence. We're taking them to register for an event. So we have to have a place to put the web form for them to register. So here I have Techie Mentor and fan page. And then if I had another one, I could just drag and drop it out there. Now you can expand and condense those very easily here. And then this kind of goes in the order that you need to create your campaign. The next thing is, what's your goal? And there are tons of different goals. There's sign up for your newsletter, register for an event, attend. Remember, there's a difference between attending and registering. Request information, download a file, indicate interest, purchase, RSVP, attend a meeting, call, participate in a Facebook promo, accept a Twitter offer, and then again, other. So for this instant, I'm going to have them register for an event. So drag and drop. Oops. Okay. And you can make this canvas look however you want to. And notice up here, the publish is now live and it says the number 2 because I have 2 new things on the canvas, right? And again, you can have multiple ways that things can happen. They can register for an event, they can download a file. Remember, you can make it complex or very simple. So for this one, I'm just going to make it easy. So what I want to do is I want to tie my 2 entry methods or my traffic sources to the actual goal, which means if they sign up on my website, I want them to be registered for the event. And if they come through my fan page, I want them to be registered for the event. So as you can see, when you hover over either one of your traffic sources, you get the green arrow. So you can just drag and drop it and drag and drop it. So there's 2 ways to enter this campaign. So this is the first step in your campaign. Now notice it has this little target here, this little bullseye. It means there's more that needs to happen here. What is the actual goal? Okay, so if I double click on this, this is where you set the goal. In other words, tell Infusionsoft what is considered to be the goal. When is this goal achieved, right? So this goal is achieved when a contact does what? Submits a landing page, submits a web form. Okay, clicks a link, reaches a score, purchases a product. Now remember I said there's 3 different ways that you can enter into a campaign. The contact, which is a user, or excuse me, not the user, a contact, which is your prospect. The user, right, is somebody who actually has the ability to get into Infusionsoft, and then an API. So you can see something from Twitter or something like that. So for this one, I'm going to say submit a web form. And this goal can be achieved by, and you notice it's gray because it'll be any contact, okay? And hit save. Now notice that this changes, so it doesn't show you, sorry about that, the joys of working from home. I needed to get my dogs in the house because they were making too much noise. Okay, So once again, just to review, we drag out our traffic sources. Where's the traffic coming from? How do they get into our campaign? And then what's the goal? Well, I want them to register for an event. So once I put that in there, then I need to tell Infusionsoft, how is the goal completed? In other words, it needs to know what the user does, or what, I keep saying user, what the contact does in order to be considered a completion. And in this instance, we had them fill out a web form, okay? Okay, now, again, you can double click on this and it will tell you all the goodies about that. So, okay, so these are my goals. Now for this one, I only have one goal. And then the next one is the sequence, okay? So once they register for an event, what happens, okay? Now, I can do a couple different things here. I can have them set up for a sequence. Oops, you know what? Yeah, okay. I can put them in a sequence, but I could also send them an email confirmation. Now, an email confirmation just says, you know what, you have been, you're part of, let me try that again. The email confirmation will basically say that you're confirmed, right? You have been registered. And then a sequence would obviously be a sequence of emails. So an email confirmation would really be one single email, as where a sequence would be multiple emails. Okay, my bad. I need to re-say this because the email confirmation is actually not what I said it was. I'm confusing it with another program. The email confirmation is for your double opt-in. So they would have to confirm that they're going to be on your list in order to receive additional information. So if you were doing a double opt-in, you would simply drag this out here and you will see that it says it's an email confirmation request and they have to confirm the email. In other words, they have to click on the link in the email in order for them to be added to your list, okay? So if you're using double opt-in and you want them to be able to say, yes, I want to be part of your list, then you would do the email confirmation. Now, you can delete this by simply clicking on that and hitting delete. And then I want to do a sequence. Let me pull a sequence in here, okay? And so here's my sequence, and then I would just say, this is what happens next. You go from here to here, okay? And you remember, you can do multiple things at this point. So I have my sequence, and I can double click and change the sequence. So I can say that this is the sequence that, this is the, let's say this is my automated webinar sequence. In other words, it sends them a sequence of videos spaced out over a week or so, okay? Now, there's a couple things we need to do here. Right now, we have the register for an event, and then we have the automated webinar sequence, but we really haven't created anything yet. So here's the big thing. Normally, when you create a web form, you go through the legacy feature, or if you wanted to create a sequence, you would go through the email marketing feature. The beauty of having a campaign is you build everything as you go. So I showed you, if you double click here on this little card in the lower left-hand corner, that's really the sequence, not the sequence, the goal that you're setting for this event. In other words, how is the goal reached? If I actually double click on the image itself, this is where I would go in and create my web form. So, because you have to create the web form, right, to put on your website in order for people to fill out the web form and get into the sequence. So this is where you would fill this out. Okay, so we can go through and we can actually create all this good stuff. What do you want? You can put in, you know, your snippets. I can go in here and put an image if I want. So I can put in my, right? And then I can actually put in some info. Well, actually, you know what? I'll just put a title in here and I'll say, now, obviously, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but you get the idea, right? So you're going to put in here what you want. You can add, oops, that's not what I wanted. So I'm just giving them instructions. Okay, so I won't go into any more than that, but there it is. Okay, now you can obviously test this to make sure that it works. So you can test it. So I could test it on myself here. So there it is, obviously, and then submit, and then I go, oh, you know what? I need to create a thank you page for that. So it goes to the right thank you page. So I could come over here and I can actually use, use this, or I can send it to a web address. Now I actually created a simple thank you page just on this WordPress Sandbox page that I'm going to use for this example, but here it is. Thank you for signing up for a free webinar series. I'm building a business. Watch your inbox for the first video. I could put more specifics there. Remember, a thank you page could also be a download page, so you could actually put the download of the video here if you wanted. I'm just going to copy that and add the web address here. You can pass the contacts information to the thank you page if you want, so you could have it, with their first name, or maybe fill in some information if needed. Here's your settings. Okay, what do you want to do? Do you want to auto-populate this form with the contacts information? Okay, when visited from Infusionsoft delivered email, which it's, that's not the case because they're going to fill it out. You can, what's the duplicate checking? So how are you checking to make sure that there's not duplicates? And then if you want to be notified when the web form is filled out, you would put your information there. And then here's the code. So this is where you would grab the JavaScript, which is what I always recommend because it's dynamic and will always update if you change the form. So I'm just going to copy that. And just to kind of go through this real quick, to show you I'm in WordPress, I'm just going to add the web form to, whoops, I clicked on the wrong thing. I'm going to add a web form to my widget here so people can sign up. Let's see, I want to add a widget and I want to add a text widget. Text is what you always want to use when you have any type of code. So I'll give it a title. I'll close that and I'll save and publish. And we'll wait a second here while it does its thing. Okay, so you can see here I've added it to the home page of this specific website, but you can see that's too big. Notice it's too wide, it gets cut off here. So the beauty of this is I can go back over to Infusionsoft, I can go back over to design, I can go into layout and style, and I can change the form width. Now I'm actually I could just type it in here. So I make it not quite so big, right? And I'm thinking, well, if I really don't need that, so let's just do that. That might look better, okay? And then I'm gonna close that. And what should happen now is it should automatically update. Now I may have to refresh this page. Okay, so this theme is mucking up my example here, but you can see that you now have the ability to sign up for my free webinar. So this is where somebody would actually start. So this is just an example. Remember, this is not a real website. It's just something I use in some of my classes. So that's how I would add that web form, okay? Now remember, you need to make sure you make it ready, which means it's ready and it's published. You can also test it. Once again, you can put the name in there, and you can make sure that it works and that you get redirected to the thank you page, which I do. Okay, so that all works. So it's always a great idea to test it. And then I can just go back to my campaign. So now when I double click on this, I'll always go back to the web form that I created for that. So you're not having to leave the campaign to go create a legacy web form. You're doing everything in here. Now, obviously, you're going to have to add the web form to whatever landing page or website that you're going to be using it. Remember to test it, and remember to make sure it's turned to ready. So back to my campaign. Okay, so that's my web form. Now here's where I can go in and do my automated sequence. Now I got a couple things I can double click on. I can double click here. When a goal is achieved in the sequence, does it stop or does it run until it's completed? Now this really is dependent upon the entire roadmap or the plan that you're using for your campaign builder. Okay, for right now, this is the last step. So once this goal is achieved, it stops. There's no more steps. Now I can change that if I add additional steps here. And then if I want to actually create the automated webinar sequence, right, I can double click here. Okay, and this is the webinar sequence. So I'm not actually creating a sequence outside of the campaign. Remember, everything is housed within the campaign. You're not doing it outside the campaign. And what I want to do here is, this is the automated webinar sequence. This is what delivers, right? This is what delivers the actual information to the person that's actually signed up, okay? The prospect or a client, whoever it might be. So you've got a couple different things. You've got timers, you've got the way you can communicate, you've got a process, and then you've got additional notes. So the timers, this is a way to tell Infusionsoft if it's an immediate, right? In other words, is it immediate when somebody signs up for this free webinar series? Is it immediate that they receive the first sequence? Or is there a delay? Or does it go out on a specific time? Or is there a timer that I need to look at that is really field-based, which would be like a contact field? Okay, well, you can see here's your start. Remember, you can drag these around, okay? Start, delay timer, date timer. So in other words, if you want to send it out immediately, okay, you don't need to really put in a timer so much. But if you want it to go out on a specific date or time, right? Or you want it to delay, for instance, if you're doing a sequence and you want to delay, you know, the first one goes out immediately, the second one goes out 2 days later. Or if you want to send it again on a specific date, you would use the date timer. So since this is a sequence, the first one's not going to have any kind of a timer. We're just going to go straight to email. So I'm going to my communications and I'm pulling out an email. Now you can do voice, fax, and letter. Same thing you can do with any type of communication from within Infusionsoft. So here's your first email. Okay, same thing. If you double click on it, it's going to open the ability to come in here and set up your email. So this could be your email. You can do the HTML, you could do the plain text. This looks the same as it always has. Up here at the top, if you already have a campaign, or not, excuse me, not a campaign, but if you already have a template that you want to use, you can come up here and click Use Template. Now you need to know what the name of the template is. So like here's my free webinar, right? So here it is. I mean, I know it's kind of a long one, but you get the idea. And then I can use this one. Okay, so now it's already here. Now, obviously, I could go in and edit this. If you don't have a template, you could certainly create one, right? So let's say this one has, you know, and I know this is not. So you'd obviously, whoops, want to put in, can't spell, right? You'd want to put in your link to whatever the video was. Okay, right? So same thing. You want to choose your from, your to, who's it going to? Now you have the option to do an email address 1 or 2. Email is usually the first email that's put in their contact record. Your subject line. Again, you can do a plain text option. You can send yourself a test. It's always going to be in draft, so I could go in here and send myself a test. Then I could jump over and look at my test, make sure everything works, make sure, you know, you always want to send yourself a test to make sure that it looks the way you need it to as far as the formatting, make sure your links work, all of that kind of stuff. And then once you're done, you can change it from draft to ready. Okay. And then you don't even have to save it because it's saved as part of the sequence. Now I want to change. That was my first webinar. Okay. So now my second one, I'm actually going to have a little bit of a delay. Okay. And so that's my first email. So I could actually say first webinar. Email. Whoops, can't spell. So it's important to describe each one of your sequence features so you understand what's this. Okay, this is the first email. So here's my delay. So I double click on it. And this says wait at least 3 days and then run on a weekday at 8 o'clock. Now you can do anything you can with this. How many days you want to wait? I want to wait 2 days. You can run any day on a weekend. So you can choose a specific. Now, if you want it to be dynamic, which means it delivers it 2 days from when the person signed up, you can just say any day. If you want to control it a little bit more, you can choose weekday, weekend, a day of the month, or however you want. And then you can choose between or at. So it doesn't matter. It can go 8 a.m. I can say 8:30 a.m. I can say 8:30 p.m., whatever it might be. And then I save. So there's my delay. And it tells me underneath that. And then my next communication would be another email, right? And then same thing. I would open this up. I go under here and choose the template. So then I would put the second sequence in there. Now, just for time's sake, I'm not actually going to type all this stuff in. Same thing, send myself a task, change it to ready. and go back to my sequence. And so this would be my second webinar email. Okay, and you may, I'll just abbreviate. How's that? That looks better. Okay, and then if I want to delay, going back to my timer, okay, and then I'm going to double click, and I'm going to wait another 2 days, and I'm going to run it any day, and I'm going to save. I'll pull this apart so you can read them. Now remember, this is also still in draft. And then maybe the last thing you want to send it on a specific date. Okay, so maybe there's a date sequence to this. Now I just want to show you this just so you know. There we go. Got to make sure it drags over. And then I can just double click on this and you can actually put the date and time in here. So if you want it to go because it's date specific, you can choose the date and you know, you can also do a date series. So I can say between 5/31 and, you know, oops, 6/5. Okay, so this one runs between that. Now, the other thing I need is I need to put in my other message here. That's why it's not connecting. Got to have my sequence. So this would be third webinar email, and then this one can wait, and then you could just continue to build on and on and on. Okay. Now, that kind of gives you an idea of the sequence. Now, you can also add processes to this, and these are different things. You can create a task, a note, an opportunity. You can do fulfillments. You can do an action set. But for instance, I can apply a tag, right? Oops, that's not what I wanted. And actually, the tag should be up at the front, but I really want the tag to be here, but it automatically comes from the last one. So my bad from not doing this first, but basically what I want to do, I'm going to delete that just so it's out of the way. I'll put my tag here. And if you want to do a tag, now obviously I put this out of sequence. It should have been right before the first webinar was sent out, or the email was sent out. I should have done a tag. I'm going to show you how to do a tag. You can apply or remove, so I can actually choose. It's not a customer. Remember, it's a prospect. Attended free webinar. And save. So now they're also going to be a tag. Then I could also do an action set after that if I wanted. So once they're done, and an action set is a set of actions. This is a legacy. Remember, okay, I did that. You would double click on it. So it'll tell you legacy items started by this action will not be stopped by goal. So because this is really outside of your event. So I could actually do this if I wanted. I'm going to remove it just so you can see. Okay, and then you can add notes, and notes are just to allow you to put some notes in here. Okay, notes about the campaign, then you can drag and drop this anywhere. All right, so there's my sequence. Okay, so I start here. By the time I'm done, I should have my lovely little apply tag. Again, that was my bad. That should have been at the front. You want to make sure that you change it to ready, right? And then back to your campaign. So now you've got it all set up. You've got your traffic. You've got your, the first thing that they need to do to get into the program, and then they get kicked off with us. Okay, you can also add notes here, same thing. Oops, and there we go. Okay. Now you always want to make sure that you publish this when you're done. So basically it's saying, what's it going to do? It's going to publish the 2 traffic sources, the 1 goal, and all of these sequences. I can say publish. Okay, and now you can see that it's active. Okay, there's nobody in it right now. Okay, and you could hit refresh data to refresh the data. So you can see that there's nobody in the automated sequence. So now if I want to actually test this, I can go to that website that I used to put the web form on and test it, which I'm going to do. Okay, you can see that I'm back to my little website. There's my little opt-in box here. So I can go in and I can do, let's see, I can do myself, I suppose. Okay, so I sign up and I hit submit. So that's how I get into the campaign, right? And then I should get to my thank you page, which I do. It just basically tells me to watch my inbox, okay? Now I need to come over here and notice that when I hit the refresh data, I have a contact in here now. So I actually have somebody that's in here. And when I click on the little button, it tells me that Susan has automatically been added to this specific campaign. So you can see you've got actions you can do in here too as well. Okay, so back to my campaign. Now I'm going to do somebody else's name here real quick. So I'm going to go back over here, just showing you how this works. So I'll do Katie. And submit. Okay, and then if I go back to my campaigns and I go into my webinar registration, one of the things that you're going to want to look at is your performance. And so now you can see that there are 2 people. Now notice when I hover over 2, I have this little button here that I can click and it will show me who is in the campaign, right? And what their status is. So this is how you can see the performance, if you will, of the campaign, okay? And you can also see active campaigns here. So that's that one, okay? Okay, so we're going to talk real quick about the decision node, I should say. So if there is a decision to be made as to what path somebody goes down in your campaign, you have what's called a decision node. And these are created automatically for you when you set up the sequences. So the system will automatically set it up, and then you need to tell the decision node what to test. So how does it know if you're going to go down Series A or Series B? So you can see that I've renamed this one to be Webinar Sequence A, and I'm actually going to create another one here. And I'm going to say this is Webinar Sequence B. Just you're going to make sure you're clear. So for instance, what I've done is, just to show you this, I'm going to go into my little web form here. And let's say that I added a couple of questions. Now I know this isn't very pretty, but just to give you the idea, I have a business over 1 year or business less than 1 year. And depending on what they click here, right, depends on which sequence they're going to go down. If they're over a year, they're going to go down, sequence A. And if they're going to go down less than a year, maybe they're going to go down sequence B. And what I've done is I've tied a tag to each one of these, okay? So just to kind of show you. So now what I want to do is I want to connect these 2 together, and you'll see what I got here is the decision node automatically pops up for me. Okay, so make sure that you actually name these, because when you look at the decision node, it's going to actually look at the names of your sequences so you can set up your rules. So when it comes to working with a decision node, you need to figure out what the rules are. In other words, what's the rule for this person to go through sequence B, and what's the rules for this person to go through sequence A. So this has to make the decision which way to send them. So this is kind of that fork in the road. So I double click on the node, and here's where I set it up. So rules for sequence A and rules for sequence B. So this is how you tell it which direction to go. Do you go left or right at the decision node, depending on the rule? So I'm going to start with sequence A. So please select if the contacts tag, because I actually created a tag, contains, what did I call it? I think I said yes. Oops. Yes. Right? That's what I wanted to do. Now you can do an and or. You can be very complex when it comes to your rules. I'm doing a very simple rule. So basically, if the contact has a tag that says yes, because the yes, that tag would be applied because they checked that box, then go down webinar sequence A. Now I'll set up sequence B. Same thing. This one I said no. Okay, there's my rules. So very simple, but you get the idea. So if they click the box that says they've been in business over a year, then they're going to go sequence A, or however you want to say it. Or if they click the box that says they've been in business less than a year, they're going to go sequence B. So I have to set up the rules that tell it when it gets the information from the web form, what to do, where to fork at the road, which direction to go. Okay, now I didn't actually set up the sequence, but that's what the decision node looks like. Now, obviously I need to publish my changes. Okay, and now I'm off. Okay, so once they register for the event, they're going to go, they'll get the decision, and then they'll get the direction they want to go. So that's really a decision node, and I haven't used those very often. More of my, I would say, advanced clients that have maybe been in Infusionsoft quite a while have used those. But if there is a decision to be made, a decision node will automatically come up when you add those separate sequences. Okay, so let's pop over and wrap this up. Oops. These are just tips, campaign builder tips, and a lot of this we've gone through. Always have a plan, have that roadmap, right? You can move the canvas around, which the canvas is where you actually create your campaigns. So this area is the canvas, and I actually have, see how I can move that with my right mouse, so you can move that very easily. You double click to set up a snippet. So if there's a setup, and sometimes there's multiple setups, you have to set up the goal, but then you also need to set up maybe the web form or the sequence. Just so you know, when something's in draft, remember you have to make sure that you publish and you have to make sure you turn it from draft to ready. Draft snippets are black, live or published snippets will be green. So you can tell by looking at the canvas which are which. You want to drag and drop the green arrow to create the sequence, which I just gave you a sample of. Always use descriptive names, so you can double click to rename. Add notes if needed. Set up your sequence by double clicking. Always be sure to publish. And then I showed you the campaign performance, how you can actually look at the progress and the effectiveness of your campaign. If your campaign isn't working correctly, then you may want to see how your goals are set up, because remember, the goals are what determine how somebody gets through the campaign sequence. So if your performance isn't doing what you need, you should really look at your goals. So I actually have a couple of samples for you that I've added to the resource library that you can use. I gave you some ideas, and you can take my samples or you can do your own, but I think the easiest thing to do, at least for me when I have a campaign, you need a roadmap. Otherwise, you're just kind of sitting there going, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. So I've given you a couple of different samples. Publish the campaign. And then if you want to add it to a, add it to a website, you can add it to your own website if you have a WordPress site, or if you don't, I can add some information into, I'll add some information into the library that you can use that sandbox that I was just playing with and give it a try there if you like. And that way you can actually kind of see the whole sequence and then test it to make sure that you see yourself in the campaign performance. So we did actions, goals, terms, decision nodes, and performance for campaigns. Again, campaigns can be very simple or very complex. It really depends, but the biggest thing is to really understand why they're being used and the roadmap that goes around them. So you're going to need to understand the strategy as well as the marketing for the sales funnel. Any questions, email us at help@techiementor.com. And you can also access the private Facebook group to give us any feedback or any questions that you may have. And just a big thank you for your patience. I really do appreciate it since I've been sick. A little behind in getting things out to you, but I do say thank you very much. And if I can be of any assistance, let me know. See you later. Bye.